A businessman, once thriving in success, lost everything in a devastating financial collapse. His dreams shattered, his wealth gone, and his spirit broken. He found himself drowning in an ocean of despair. Every attempt to rebuild had failed, leaving him with no choice but to surrender to hopelessness. One evening, with nothing left to hold on to, he decided to leave the bustling city behind. He walked for miles, his weary feet carrying him toward the unknown, until he reached the peak of a distant mountain. As he sat there, gazing at the endless sky, a thought crossed his mind. Perhaps this was his final chance. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath, and with all his heart, prayed to the divine. "O Lord, I have lost everything. My efforts have failed, my hope is gone. If there is a way, show me the path. Help me rise again, or give me the strength to accept my fate." As the wind howled through the mountains, he waited in silence, hoping for an answer. Minutes turned into hours, but no answer came. The man sat motionless, staring at the vast horizon. The sun had begun its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson. Just as he was about to give up, he heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching from behind. Turning around, he saw an old man with a long white beard, dressed in simple robes, leaning on a wooden staff. His eyes held a mysterious depth, as if they had witnessed countless lifetimes. The old man smiled gently and asked, "Why do you look so lost, my son?" With a heavy heart, the businessman poured out his sorrow. He spoke of his failures, his shattered dreams, and his unbearable pain. "I have nothing left," he concluded. "I prayed for help, but no one answered." The old man listened patiently, then sat beside him. After a moment of silence, he picked up a small rock and held it in his palm. "Tell me," he said, "if I squeeze this rock, will water come out?" The businessman frowned. "No, of course not," he replied. The old man nodded. "And why is that?" "Because it has no water inside it." The old man smiled. "Exactly. My son, just like this rock, you cannot give up hope if you have none inside you. No matter how much you pray, no miracle will happen unless you first find the strength within yourself. The answer you seek is not in the sky nor in the wind. It is within you." The businessman looked at the old man, his mind racing. "But how do I find that strength? I have failed too many times." The old man gently placed the rock in his hand. "Failures are not the end. They are the lessons that prepare you for success. Stand up, walk back down this mountain, and start again. This time, not with fear, but with wisdom. Trust yourself, and you will find your way." The businessman clenched the rock in his fist. For the first time in months, something sparked within him, a glimmer of hope. The businessman looked at the old man, his mind conflicted. "But what if I fail again?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man chuckled. "Then you will stand up again, just like a child learning to walk. Have you ever seen a baby give up after falling? Because failure is not the end. Giving up is." The words sank deep into the man's heart. He had spent so much time mourning his losses that he had forgotten the power of resilience. Taking a deep breath, he looked down at the rock in his palm. It was just a simple stone, yet it now felt like a symbol of something greater, a reminder that strength comes from within. When he lifted his head to thank the old man, he was gone. The wind blew softly, carrying only silence. It was as if he had never been there. Had it been a real person or a divine messenger? The businessman didn't know, but something inside him had changed. With renewed determination, he stood up. The mountain that had once felt like an escape now felt like a starting point. As he made his way down, step by step, he promised himself, this time he would not let failure define him. He would rise again, wiser and stronger. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. He was no longer the man who had climbed this mountain in despair. He was the man who would rebuild his life, one step at a time. As he descended the mountain, the businessman felt lighter, as if the weight of his failures had been lifted. The sun had set, and the stars now twinkled above him, reminding him that even in the darkest of nights, there was always light. When he finally reached the base of the mountain, he looked back one last time. The peak where he had once sat in despair now seemed like a distant memory. He clenched the small rock in his fist, a silent promise to himself he would not give up. Returning to the city, he knew he had to start over. But this time, he wouldn't blindly chase success. Instead, he would focus on learning from his past mistakes. The first thing he did was visit an old friend, a former business partner who had once warned him about his reckless investments. Swallowing his pride, he shared everything: his failures, his regrets, and his newfound determination. His friend listened carefully and then said, "I always knew you had potential, but success isn't just about hard work, it's about making the right choices." Over the next few weeks, the businessman spent his time studying, analyzing, and understanding where he had gone wrong. He attended seminars, read books, and even sought advice from experienced entrepreneurs. And then, with careful planning, he started a new business. This time, not chasing shortcuts or overnight success, but focusing on sustainable growth. Months passed and small successes turned into bigger ones. The business grew steadily, not through luck, but through patience and wisdom. One evening, as he sat in his office, looking at the progress he had made, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the small rock. He smiled. It wasn't just a rock anymore. It was a symbol of his journey, from despair to hope, from failure to wisdom. And at that moment, he realized something profound. True success wasn't about wealth or status. It was about resilience, growth, and never giving up. He had lost everything once, but in the process, he had gained something far greater: the strength to rise again. Years passed, and the businessman's life had transformed completely. His new venture had not only become successful, but had also earned him respect in the industry. But more than the financial success, he cherished the wisdom he had gained, the ability to face setbacks with courage and adapt to challenges with resilience. One day, as he was walking through the city, he noticed a young man sitting on a park bench, his face buried in his hands. Something about the young man's posture reminded him of his past self, the same despair, the same sense of loss. Curious, he approached and gently asked, "Is everything all right?" The young man looked up, his eyes filled with frustration. "Number, I've lost everything. My business failed, and I don't know what to do anymore." The businessman sat beside him and smiled knowingly. "Let me tell you a story." And so he shared his own journey, the rise, the fall, the despair, and the lesson he had learned on that distant mountain. He spoke of the old man, the rock, and the realization that true strength comes from within. The young man listened intently, his expression slowly changing from hopelessness to curiosity. When the businessman finished, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the same small rock he had kept all these years. Placing it in the young man's palm, he said, "This rock reminded me that failure isn't the end. It's just a lesson. If you're willing to learn, you will rise again. Now it's your turn." The young man stared at the rock, then at the businessman, a flicker of hope appearing in his eyes. As the businessman walked away, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come full circle. The wisdom that had once saved him was now being passed on. And so the cycle continued, proving that in life, true success is not just about personal achievements, but about lifting others up along the way. As the businessman walked away, he glanced back one last time. The young man was still staring at the rock, lost in thought. A small smile played on his lips, as if a new spark had ignited within him. The businessman knew that this was just the beginning of the young man's journey, just as it had once been for him. With a deep breath, he looked up at the sky, feeling a quiet sense of peace. Life had taught him that every failure carried the seed of a new beginning, and as long as one had the courage to rise again, no defeat was ever final. Smiling to himself, he whispered, "Thank you," not knowing whether he was thanking the old man, the divine, or simply life itself. Then, without looking back, he walked forward, toward the endless possibilities that awaited him.